When our lungs are filled with grief and our arms can't carry one more thing, you look to us. When our hearts are sunken in and pain floods our veins, when our eyes are fixed, closed, limbs heavy, and the world's weight is upon us, you look to us, asking why we no longer dance. When the sun shines down on buried bones, the tree, the seed, the water flows, the wings that sing, you look to us. When we take flight, soaring over open grasslands, we dip and hover, swift spin, swerve, zipping and zigzagging. The dragonflies, are we not water dancers? All of the earth, a living stage. You look to us, asking why we no longer dance.
Dragonflies, they keep everything functioning as we understand it, and it's been fine-tuned for millions of years before even we came on the scene. Dragonflies are very ancient. If we go back 300 million years or so, they were able to grow to an enormous size, and some of them had wingspans as wide as 75 centimeters. And these giants dominated the air.
Biological indicators are species that can tell you about the state of an ecosystem. Dragonflies make good biological indicators because they have life cycles that depend on both water and terrestrial environment, so they can tell you about the state of both.
It's almost like a triangle of dragonfly, us and water.
Dragonflies are of conservation significance, so their presence or absence should tell you something about what's happening in the environment.
Conservation and ecological services begin to help people to survive, improve their livelihoods, offer business opportunities, and provide a much more sustainable solution in the long term.
From an ecological point of view, how do we ensure that whatever that we're doing, we're not distracting the environment to an extent where biodiversity is completely compromised? If dragonflies depending on rivers and you get rid of water, you disturb the entire freshwater ecosystem, because everything is interlinked.
In essence, you're saying half the amount of dragonflies there were a couple of years ago.
Definitely. Well, as far as my research can tell thus far, which is scary.
Right now, we're living in a time when we need to be very aware that the world is changing. The natural world is incredibly beautiful, and without it, we wouldn't be able to survive.
In our country, of its given size, is the highest density of biodiversity hotspots in the world. The danger that we have in South Africa and the world at large is this disconnect between people and the natural environment. And the urban community are mostly not as well informed about how dependent we are on the environment.
And what we need to realize is that the less we conserve, the more rare certain things that we need to survive are going to become.
We think nature is free. We think the oxygen is free. We think our water is free, or freely available at least. There's only 30 centimeters between life and death of the planet, and that's the soil. Our food comes from healthy ecosystems, and we need that biodiversity to maintain all the ecosystem processes. We need it for regulating water flow, for having healthy catchments, we need it for pollination, we need it for everything we do in life. What we must do now is really maintain the biodiversity that we have.
Humans, although we consider ourselves the most intelligent beings, are actually the only species that is not working towards the ecological well-being of our planet. The less we conserve, the more rare certain things that we need to survive are going to become,
we're
such as
responsible
water, oil, food.
I think that
And
there needs
if
to
we
be a
don't do
point
something
where
about
there
it,
has
we're
been
going to wipe ourselves out.
a huge
And what we
realization.
need to realize is that the world will be able to carry on without us.
And the reason why this is so close to my heart is because this is the dam that I grew up on, and there's nothing left. And I wanted to come look for myself how bad the situation really is. And guys, it's dire. I'm supposed to be in water right now. What is the cause of this besides the lack of rain? Is there mismanagement of our water supplies? Is there overuse? Is there overpopulation? It has to be more than just lack of rain.
Global climate change is not just about increasing temperature, it's also about more droughts, more floods, and these have a major effect on the local dragonfly populations.
A lot of our water has been used and abused, and we don't know how long this drought's going to last.
We basically didn't address the fact that we're a water-scarce country. Because, I mean, the facts are there. South Africa is rated as the 30th most arid country in the world, you know, and this isn't any new information, to be honest.
I would put this more down to a socioeconomic drought than one that actually is because of nature. I think it's important to make these kind of distinctions so that we don't always blame the fact that there is no rainfall. It's actually our adaptation to the conditions that is weak and limited.
We basically insist on using the highest quality water for everything we do. Most of the water goes to toilet flushing and irrigation, which are two things that don't need potable drinking water in the first place, you know. So these are things that we should have, you know, addressed a long time ago.
It's actually not that difficult in a home to live with 87 litres, but the rate of consumption is starting to increase, and it looks like we're really struggling. You realize that when you look at the fynbos and the natural vegetation, that's not suffering at all. It looks green. It doesn't look like a drought's happening at all. It's really just where we've put our particular resources and become over-reliant on surface water to actually deal with our needs.
You will hardly see a pristine river stretch in any urban areas, especially in South Africa, simply because some rivers are being considered as dumping sites, which is the main problem, where most of the rivers are either canalized or they are either diverted. That put too much pressure on the quality of water.
If we consider the natural environments in the country, alien invasive species result in biodiversity loss.
Most of our catchments are highly infested with various types of alien plants. Alien plants are a serious threat in terms of evaporating huge amount of water. Dragonflies will tell us that there is invasive alien plants that are really affecting the ecological conditions. The moment you had your rivers dry, then you automatically you won't be able to have new dragonflies coming out from those rivers.
Obviously, conserving a natural area is the best thing you can do for them. But in a world with an ever-increasing human population, that's not always possible because humans have needs. I don't think endemic species that are very sensitive will be able to survive human disturbance. Plantations, no matter where they are necessary. People need paper. People need toilet paper. And we can't survive without it.
The plantation trees, whether they are gums or pines, planted all over the place, in river courses, even on steep hillsides, and so on. So it was what we call water wall forestry. And of course, with water wall forestry, this meant that there was no room left for natural biodiversity to establish and thrive.
To build a greener economy, we basically have to strike a balance between this loss of biodiversity and possibly environmental degradation, while at the same time allowing for economic growth in the country, which is massively important, specifically in developing countries, such as South Africa.
Let's try and see as to what other measures can we put in place to try and improve the ecological conditions that dragonflies are in currently.
When we carry your weight in our flight, our flow, our song, our sun, your night, we lift you up upon our wings. We dance for you, on and on. We give you soft colors when we cry, lessons on life and how to die. We give, you take. And now it slows. The waterfall, a tepid drip, the mighty gulp, a timid sip. The dancers fall, we cry and call. The messenger of nature, it slows, it slows, it slows. And oh, how painfully it shows.
We can't use nature. We must work in harmony with nature. If there is responsible industry, then there is a future. So this led to the concept of optimizing production without compromising biodiversity and without compromising ecosystem processes. And having the two together and working together benefits both. The idea is to maintain the forestry compartments, but instead of having them close together, there's space. You can have patches of plantation trees separated by natural land, which is a whole network of corridors. And this network of corridors is known as ecological networks. Between them, it's the original wild vegetation in the area. It's good to have these wide corridors. All these organisms really require these large networks to live as they would have done prior to humans being on the landscape. It's by far the best approach with plantation forestry.
Well, every insect and every animal and every plant on Earth makes part of a very sensitive ecological system. That's why the whole ecological network concept is a good idea of how to deal with living in a world where nature and humans can live together.
I think one of the massive benefits of ecological networks is that they provided proof that we can have conservation in production landscapes and that it can be successful.
Together with responsible forestry companies, we were able to work through new ways forward.
The pressure that we were under, having gone wall to wall and all the fallout, we had been given the name of a biodiversity desert, and that's really hard to mitigate and to justify your business. So producing things like whether it's a forest, a working forest, or agriculture, it has impacts, obviously. So this is a sensible, rational way of producing both. So it's producing what we need, which is wood, fiber, and the other benefits of forest, together with the essential ecosystem functions. So it's not a perfect balance, but it's really such an improvement, having come from wall to wall to this combination. We now understand the value of protected areas, high conservation areas, and what the ecological networks do is connect these. And of course, that grassland is associated with a number of rare species. All these protected areas have different values that are not necessarily monetary values, but they're hugely important for us and for society into the future.
When you talk about the ecological networks now and the corridors and all that, I mean, you see all those patches that are actually not planted, running downstream. There's a little channel coming through, and it links up into the bigger nature reserve. So it's like everything that we do, it comes back to environment.
So the structures that Mondi has in place to facilitate conservation, they definitely contribute to some of the successes that we see on the ground. The ecological network model provides conservation and options for the future.
Hopefully, through this example, other agricultural practices will start doing the same thing.
We never intended for the ecological network model to only stay in forestry plantations.
Doing conservation is not separate from living in an urban environment or a workplace. There are a lot of corridors in and around Cape Town, which is intrinsic to the City of Cape Town's planning. Some of the urban gardens, and particularly Kirstenbosch, is extraordinarily rich in natural biodiversity.
People in urban areas generally see an open space as a waste from economic point of view. But a small, pristine patch will do a very big job in sustaining the small natural organisms that are within that environment. Water-sensitive design is something that is equivalent to the ecological network, but in an urban environment that supports biodiversity, because if we manage our urban rivers very well, the associated biodiversity will also benefit from that.
The Liesbeek River is the blue-green corridor that runs through some of the southern suburbs, and it is the cleanest urban river in South Africa. And so what we've done in the project is to take a section of the canal and to allow some of the reeds, weeds, and some natural plants to grow in the cracks and crevices. We now have almost a forested section in the canal, and the diversity of species that has entered into that area is quite remarkable. And we have to look at sort of small species, the macroinvertebrates, showing us very good quality of water, so they choose where their habitats are favorable. A dragonfly would be typically found in that area and is a really good indicator of water quality.
By conserving biodiversity, then we're maintaining all the cycles of life. We need to maintain biodiversity. It's our best friend for future survival.
If we're going to deal with conservation and ecology, we also have to make sure there is a social element that's drawn into it. How do you shake politicians to begin to say, this is a priority which you need to see 5 years ahead and invest? And then you start to close the loop on a system that changes the dynamics of how we treat conservation in South Africa.
Let's rather not wait for the government to always tell us what we need to be doing, but let's start having a conversation as citizens.
Our actions will cause the most suffering through our impact on nature and its response to our actions. It's critical. Now it's the last chance. We've got the last card, and we must play that card now and very wisely if we care about our grandchildren.
Look, there. In the corner of your room. Your dancing shoes still fit. Dust them off. Make them shine. Sing with the wind. Care for the tree, the seed. Hold the mountain just like the moon does. Run, river, run. Follow the water dancers. Dance with us. What happens when dancers meet? Hearts ablaze. You carry me. I'll carry you. The fall isn't so far. The pain split in two. You too are a parent. You too are nature. You too are a water dancer.